Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD tonight. This is a webinar that you create with your questions, and the way you do that is you write them to me. And so there's a chat box down there on the bottom of the screen on the right-hand side. There's a chat box that you can write your question or questions to me. Usually I'm only going to be able to take about one question per person. And we will talk about Lyme disease tonight. So if you have any questions about Lyme disease, feel free to write those to me. None of these webinars are identical, and that's because every time there's some different questions that get asked, and sometimes we even get into a theme of the night with the questions. So we'll have to see how that goes this evening. For those of you that are new here, welcome. I see some familiar names on my participant board tonight, so I know there are some people coming back again too, and I'm glad to see some familiar names for that as well too. In terms of some administrative stuff for tonight, I am creating a recording of the webinar, and I will send a link to you tomorrow morning through an email that I'll send out somewhere around 6 to 6:30 a.m. Seattle time. You can also find the recording posted on my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/treat Lyme. I'll have that posted up somewhere around 6 to 6:30 a.m. in the morning as well. And then finally, I'm also posting the same video at the bottom of my supplement store, the landing page, which is Marty Ross MD Supplements. And you can find that at treatlyme.com. That will be posted there as well too. So there's multiple ways to find a recording of this webinar. And so if you happen to miss something tonight, you'll be able to do that tomorrow morning. So we'll spend about an hour and a half here tonight, or until I lose my voice. Sometimes I do have to stop a little bit early. I'm usually able to answer most questions, but every now and then I get stumped, and sometimes you give me new ideas that I even wind up incorporating into my practice. I'm interested to see what kind of questions you'll have. During the webinar tonight too, I will be posting the questions so that you can see them. I will read them though, because sometimes in the recorded version, you cannot see the questions so clearly. And so I try to read them so people can know what's going on in the recorded version of the webinar too. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and get started here tonight. The first question is from Margaret. Hi, Margaret. Let's see. Do you agree that statins or red yeast rice removes Lyme spirochetes? No, I don't. I haven't seen any science that supports that. I haven't seen any ideas, or I haven't even seen somebody do that before in terms of my colleagues. I'd be interested to know who is doing that, but I am not aware of any theory or reason why that should work. And so I'd be suspicious of that. Okay. All right. Thanks for that question, Margaret. Hello, Katie. Let's see. The first is that the back of my neck twitches or jerks constantly and is sensitive to touch. The second is that I have a hyperactive startle response. A sudden noise can cause tension, muscle seizing, and panic attacks. What can you suggest to help heal these symptoms? Okay. So the muscle twitching and even the jerks sometimes can be helped with magnesium. Magnesium helps your muscles relax. And what I would use is a mix of magnesium malate and magnesium citrate. Thorne makes a product called magnesium citramate. That's CITRAMATE. And I would do about probably 3 or 4 of those pills a night. Each pill has about 150 milligrams of magnesium. Your limiting factor on magnesium is that if you take too much, it can sometimes give diarrhea. That's why I try to limit you to 600 milligrams, which is 4 of those pills. And the reason to take magnesium at night is that magnesium at that kind of level can sometimes make you sleepy. So it's something that can help with sleep. Okay. So that's one thing I would suggest doing. It also sounds like you've got irritated nerves, probably from either Lyme or I would wonder about Bartonella. So I would want you to take a look at some of the articles I've written about how to diagnose Bartonella, how to diagnose Lyme. And if you meet the criterion for both of those, then I would treat for both Lyme and Bartonella to make sure that you're getting that taken care of. In terms of calming the agitated nervous system that you have, one thing you could consider trying is lithium. So lithium is an element, a mineral actually, that is needed by every one of our nerves to function correctly. If you become deficient in lithium within the nerves, they can become more irritable. And so you can use lithium orotate, that's a supplement, and it's OROTATE, 5 milligrams, 1 pill 3 times a day. So that's 15 milligrams a day. Now, by comparison, sometimes we use lithium as a prescription for people with manic depression or bipolar illness. And when we use it for that, we're talking 600 to 900 milligrams a day. So what I've just recommended with lithium is more as a nutrient to calm your agitated nerves down, okay? So first of all, make sure you're treating your right infections, Lyme or Bartonella. Take a look at the information in the Treat Lyme book about how to do the diagnosis of those, okay? Number two, I would get on some magnesium up to about 600 milligrams at night, and I like a mix of magnesium malate and magnesium citrate called magnesium citramate by Thorne. And then the third thing I would look at is doing some lithium, okay? So I'm going to do a quick screen share here because I've just mentioned a couple things I just want to show you. Called the Treat Lyme book, and actually probably over the next month you're going to see a new logo that's coming for this, as well as I'm going to be changing the name to just calling it Treat Lyme. The fact that I call it a book I know has created confusion for some people, but it still is going to be a full Lyme disease information site. At this time I have everything arranged into chapters, okay? So in terms of figuring out how to diagnose something, take a look at my chapter called How to Diagnose. And there is an article I have about how do you diagnose Lyme disease. And in fact, this is a video that I recorded probably about a month ago now, it looks like, and a little over a month ago, but it's pretty comprehensive. And then in terms of how do you diagnose Bartonella, take a look at this article called It Could Be Bartonella Babesia, the Symptoms and Signs, okay? And then in terms of if you're wondering where you can find some of the supplements that I may talk about tonight, this is my supplement store called Marty Ross MD Supplements. If you're wondering what products I recommend that are of high quality when I mention supplements generically, take a look here. You can look under my supplements tab where I have organized things by both manufacturers and by problems that you might have, okay? But you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. Or in the case of magnesium, if you want to see what I have that has magnesium in it, you could literally just go ahead and do a search for magnesium. And what you'll see is one of the products I have is this magnesium citramate that I was just telling you about, okay? So the issue with supplements is that often there's many kinds of supplements that you can find out there, but a lot of the stuff that out there is garbage. And what I've tried to do at my supplement store here is to curate some of the highest quality supplements so that you have the best chance of getting well, basically. And I've curated ones based on quality of ingredients. Secondly, to find products that tend not to use a lot of artificial fillers that could hurt you. Okay? All right, let me go back here. And good luck to you. All right. Hello, Cindy. Let's see. My 21-year-old son experiences heart pain. We've been to the ER twice now. Can you speak about Lyme and this pain he's having? It's hard to say. So by heart pain, I assume you mean he's having chest pain. And I assume in the emergency room, if it truly was coming from his heart, they might have seen some things on the EKG that would suggest it's a heart problem. So I suspect it's probably not true heart pain. It's something that they could have determined in the emergency room. Now, it's possible to have pain in the chest area for a few reasons. Number one, if he's on Lyme antibiotics, it's possible that those antibiotics are causing and triggering something called reflux, which is acid coming from the stomach up into the food pipe, okay? And up in the food pipe, that can give you kind of a burning sensation and chest pain. And so there are some things you can do for that. Another thing that can sometimes happen is Lyme and Bartonella can give inflammation in the tissues around the heart, the connective tissues, sometimes even the deep muscles, not the heart itself, that can give chest pain as well too. So some things that you might consider trying if this is heartburn. Sometimes a clue that it could be heartburn is that people will have periods of tasting acid up in the back of their mouth. But you can have heartburn without even having a taste of acid. And the things that I like to recommend for heartburn related to the medicines is to do licorice, actually, herbal medicinal licorice. And there's and what happens when you chew licorice tablets, your spit and licorice mix together to create a microscopic gelatinous coat that covers the food pipe so that acid going up is not irritating to the food pipe, okay? Now, typically you can get these licorice tablets in 300 to 350 milligram pills. You want to chew 2 of them 3 times a day before meals and also before bed at night. The product I like using is a product made by Integrative Therapeutics called Rhizinate. That's Rhizinate for heartburn. And I find that to work well. You might want to try that for about a month just to see if it makes a difference. And then also, in terms of getting inflammation down in some of the connective tissue and the muscles and the tissues that hold things together, to decrease inflammation in this disorder, many of you know from participating in my webinars, I like to use curcumin. Curcumin is a component of turmeric. It gets inside white blood cells and decreases their production of inflammatory chemicals that get made in Lyme called cytokines. And so you want to take liposomal curcumin is what I prefer. And it's a 500 milligram pill. And you would want to do 1 or 2 pills 3 times a day to help get some of that inflammatory pain down as well too. And then finally, consider whether he's got Lyme and Bartonella. Lyme and or Bartonella. Bartonella sometimes can give a chest pain of this kind of a nature too. And I just showed you the articles that you would look at to help figure those diagnoses out as well too. All right. All right. Good luck to you, Cindy. And thank you for that question. Good luck to your son. Hello, Time. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Would it be best to treat possible candida and and gut dysbiosis before introducing antibiotics? And how to address weight loss issues due to limited caloric intake? Thanks for your help. All right. So generally, in my treatments, when I am visiting with somebody for the first time, and I'm trying to figure out what infections they have and then what to treat, if yeast is there and it seems to be a very significant factor, I may hold off on starting antibiotics for about a month until I actually start to treat their yeast, okay? And so the reason I do that is when you have too many yeast in the intestines, they lead to a few problems. Number one, the yeast that are in your intestines, your immune system will see them and overproduce chemicals called cytokines, right? And as many of you know from my previous webinars and all of my writings, I believe that Lyme disease is mainly a syndrome of too many cytokines. In fact, the symptoms that you have that suggest you have Lyme are actually too many cytokine symptoms, all right? So when white blood cells see yeast, or when white blood cells see Lyme, or when white blood cells see too many mold toxins in your system, if you have mold toxicity illness too, what happens is they release cytokines. And cytokines are good and bad. On the good side, cytokines cause more white blood cells to be made. They draw those white blood cells to where the infection is, and they help them work better. Okay, that's all good. However, in mold toxin illness and in yeast sometimes and in Lyme sometimes, the immune system doesn't do a good job getting rid of them and treating them, but it keeps trying harder and harder. And eventually it makes too many cytokines, all right? And too many cytokines make it so you can't think. They give you fatigue. They make you hurt all over. They can interfere with how your hormonal systems work. They disturb your sleep centers. All those things that we call Lyme symptoms, they're too many cytokine symptoms, okay? So at the beginning of a treatment, I try to do things that I can to lower cytokines. One of those is get on curcumin. As I just mentioned earlier, 500 milligrams 3 times a day. That lowers cytokines, okay? Secondly, get sleep. Get 7 to 9 hours of sleep, even if you have to do things to get to sleep. So herbal or prescription, because getting sleep lowers cytokines, all right? Number 3, if there's a yeast problem, deal with it upfront, because too many yeast in the intestines which, as I've just indicated, can trigger more cytokines to be made. Okay, so that's kind of that's how I like to address it. Now, if the yeast clinically seems to be more of a minor problem, I might start antibiotics at the same time while I'm trying to get the yeast out. But often I may take about a month first to get yeast out before I go into those antibiotics. All right. Then second part of your question is, what do I do if somebody's got weight issues? So first of all, I try to get yeast out so they might get better absorption of their nutrients, okay? Secondly, if I've got a difficulty getting weight on, I'm going to tend to emphasize foods that are rich in fat or add fat, okay? Fat is what is your most nutrient-dense form or caloric-dense form of food. So good sources of fat could be coconut oil, could be avocado, you can even do olive oil, you can do flaxseed oil, you can do nuts and nut butters, you can do cheeses if you don't have milk or dairy sensitivity. And I would try to add increasing amounts of those basically to the diet. Okay, I would emphasize those over carbs, like beans, legumes, and grains. I would emphasize the fats over those. Okay. So that just gives you some general ideas. All right. So in terms of how do you diagnose yeast and how do you treat yeast, let me just do a quick screen share. So that those that are interested, you all can come back and look at these later. Lyme book, take a look. I have a chapter about yeast. Take a look here. And the articles that you would want to take a look at, there's two main ones. One is called Kills Yeast, a Brief Guide, where I lay out the best options to treat yeast. And then the second one is an article about how do you diagnose yeast, and I call it a silent problem, do you have yeast? And I give you some tools here in this article to figure out if you have too many yeast, okay? So let me go back here. Good luck to you. Hello, Lindsay. Let's see. I recently started having PVCs and visited my cardiologist. I did an echo test, echo stress, and wore a heart monitor for 10 days, which detected the PVCs. Both echoes were fine. He was not concerned. However, I am. I have never had these before. Does this mean something has changed or I have gotten worse and the Lyme has now affected my heart? How do I know for sure? The PVCs are very unsettling. Okay, so PVCs, everyone, stands for premature ventricular contraction. All right, that's a medical term, of course. So your heart has 4 chambers. The bottom 2 chambers are called the ventricles, and they're the chambers that actually pump blood out into your body. The top 2 chambers, called the atrium, receive blood from the body, basically, all right? And so in terms of how the electrical pattern and pulsing of the heart is supposed to work is the beating of the heart is promoted or is started with an electrical pulse that starts at the top of the heart in the atrium. And then it's supposed to work through a bunch of electrical connections down to the bottom of the heart, causing the ventricle to squeeze. Sometimes, though, parts of the ventricle will decide they're going to fire on their own an electrical shot or electrical charge, and that can give you premature ventricular contractions, okay? Now, generally they are considered benign, and that is they're considered benign as long as they don't cause you to get dizzy or chest pain or have stroke-like symptoms when they're occurring, and generally they don't, okay? And the reason we would get concerned about PVCs is if they are causing those problems. In other words, if the PVC itself is decreasing the output of blood flow from your heart, decreasing blood to the heart and heart muscle and blood to the brain, that's something we worry about. But for most people, PVCs are mainly a symptom that is disturbing but doesn't cause any major complications to how your brain works or how your heart works, okay? And that sounds like what they're seeing here. The one thing, I don't know that it necessarily means that your condition is worsening. What I would suggest doing, though, is start some magnesium, because often if you have become slightly magnesium deficient, that can worsen the symptoms of PVCs or cause them to occur more often, okay? So earlier tonight, I talked about magnesium on the first question, but you can use it also to help calm PVCs in the heart. And the way I would do it, I would do the magnesium citramate that I talked about earlier. And I would do 3 or 4 of the 150 milligram pills at nighttime before you go to bed. Try that for a month and see if that will help calm down some of that PVC activity. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Lindsay. Excuse me. Good luck to you, and thank you for that question. Hello, Rita. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Treated Lyme for 1 year with antibiotics, and at the end, my doctor felt I might be starting a drug-induced lupus reaction from minocycline. She has suggested treating the Lyme with Plaquenil. What are your thoughts on this? Thank you for what you do. All right. So Plaquenil is was originally designed as an anti-malaria medicine. All right. It's a quinine derivative medicine. It's a drug like quinine, or has a quinine derivative. And we no longer use it for malaria treatments because it just doesn't work that well for malaria. But what was discovered is that in addition to treating malaria, it is a pretty good anti-inflammatory. And it may help lower cytokines a bit, although it's not the main drug I would use for that. And it can decrease prostaglandin inflammatory chemicals, like the kind that are made when you have lupus, for instance. And so the number one prescribers of Plaquenil these days are rheumatologists, actually. They use it as part of treating things like rheumatoid arthritis or treating lupus to get inflammation down. All right. So on the one hand, I can understand why she's using it. Now, there are some of my colleagues that also will use it to treat the cyst form of Lyme. But I used to do that like maybe 10 years ago, but I don't do that any longer. And the reason I don't do it any longer is there's competing research out there that suggests that maybe it does get rid of cyst Lyme, but maybe it promotes cyst Lyme, okay? And because I can't tell, I shy away from using it as something to kill Lyme, all right? So many of you know Lyme exists in 3 forms in you. So it lives as a spirochete. That's that corkscrew-looking thing that many of you find pictures on the internet. It also lives inside of cells, and that's called intracellular Lyme. And then it can live as a microscopic cyst form of the germ too. If Plaquenil does anything, it might treat cysts, but again, there's competing information that says it might actually treat or promote cyst formation, okay? So in terms of adding it to your treatment to help with inflammation from a lupus-induced syndrome, yeah, I think that's a good idea. The other thing that it can do is it can help your tetracycline antibiotics and your macrolides, which would be things like clarithromycin and azithromycin or Zithromax. Clarithromycin is Biaxin. It can help them work more effectively to treat Lyme that's inside your cells. So Plaquenil, in addition to being anti-inflammatory, helps lower acid levels inside of cells, and in particular, a part of your cell called a vacuole, where Lyme will live inside of cells as intracellular Lyme living inside of cells. And in those vacuoles, Lyme creates an acidic environment. And what Plaquenil does is it makes that acidic environment in the vacuoles more alkaline or more basic, which allows things like Biaxin, which is clarithromycin, Zithromax, which is azithromycin, minocycline, doxycycline. It helps them work more effectively too. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Rita. Hello, Lindsay. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Let's see. Last week you mentioned to heal my brain, I should be on NT-factor, curcumin 3 a day, and glutathione. What about fish oil and resveratrol? I have recently started taking 3.2 grams of fish oil a day. Are these things too much to take all at once and successful in crossing the blood-brain barrier? Let's see. Also, many LLMDs say glutathione should be taken away from everything else so as to not pull other vitamins out. Thank you. All right. So in terms of, let's try to break this into parts here. So first of all, the NT factor, everyone, the reason I suggested that last week is NT factor is made up of is a supplement that has a group of fats in it called phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylserine that make up the covering of your nerve cell membranes and also make up the covering of energy factories found in our cells called mitochondria. Often if you have nerve injury, that means you also have injury to the mitochondria that creates energy so nerves can heal, and you'll have injury to the fat membrane of the nerve cells. So what we do to fix the mitochondria covering also fixes the nerve cell membrane, and that product is called NT Factor. I use a product by Research Nutritionals called NT Factor Energy. You would start at 2 pills 3 times a day for 2 months and then decrease to 1 pill 3 times a day after that. The other thing I like to do is lower inflammation, and I like using curcumin to do that, 500 milligrams 3 times a day. I mentioned that earlier tonight. And then finally, there's a very powerful antioxidant that every one of our cells manufactures on its own called glutathione. And glutathione is used by all of our cells to repair damage from the inside, okay? And glutathione in particular is made in large amounts in the liver, for instance, where it's used to detox, for instance. But if your nerves are injured, they may have exhausted their glutathione supply to heal. And so I also like having people take glutathione, okay? All right, so that's why I mentioned those 3 things. All right, now, resveratrol is an antioxidant that also helps lower cytokines. And so I prefer curcumin over it. I think it works better, and so I usually do not use resveratrol. I tend to like using curcumin as an option for that. The fish oil might be helpful, but you're already getting these fats that you get, the phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylserine that you get as part of NT Factor, I think work better as fats than what fish oil does, and therefore I don't recommend it. The reason, I mean, it might give you some benefit, but boy, by the time you start taking all these things, it's just another thing to take that gets to be a little extensive. So I think the core program of NT Factor, curcumin, and glutathione I recommend. Because you would be on that, I don't think you necessarily need to do fish oil, and resveratrol is really duplicated by the curcumin, okay? All right, you're not going to hurt yourself by doing those things, but I just think it's duplicated, all right? So if you're looking to cut some things out because this all gets expensive, cut both of those out, all right? All right, then in terms of glutathione, taking it away from things, I don't find it necessary. I find it to be very effective as long as it's a liposomal glutathione, meaning it's microscopically wrapped in fat to increase its absorption. I think it is okay to take it with other nutrients and vitamins at the same time. All right. I hope that answers your question. All right. Good luck to you, Lindsay. So if anyone wants to know more about a program I have to repair nerve injury or even your mitochondria, I'm just going to do a quick screen share here. To repair neuropathy or nerve injury, take a look at this chapter called Brain and Nerves. And then I would take a look at my article called Neuropathy Repair, Heal That Tingling, Numbness, and Pain. Okay. Also in here, if you want to read more about glutathione, take a look at this article. It's called Glutathione, the Great Fixer. Okay. And then I believe if you want to read more about the NT factor phospholipids that I was just talking about, take a look at this article here too. Okay. All right. Let me go back here. Good luck to you. All right. Hello, Lisa. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Marty. My insurance will not cover Malarone, and I cannot take antibiotics due to diarrhea. So what can I take instead? What do you think about Rife? Finally, are you currently accepting new patients in your practice? Okay, I'll try to answer all of those for you. So in terms of Malarone, if you're looking at that as an option, even though your insurance will not pay for it, you could pay for it. I know it may be expensive, but one way you can find Malarone at a more reasonable price, and I think you can get it so it's even around, and I know this is so expensive, don't get me wrong, but I think you can get it so it's around $100 a month. Actually, let's look at it together. I'll show you what I do to find lower cost medicines. I'm going to do a screen share with you here, okay? Let's see here. We'll look up Malarone together. So I'm going to do it. So there's a program called goodrx.com. So when my patients do not have insurance, this is where I go, goodrx.com. And you can get coupons based on where you live. All right. So what I'm about ready to show you is pricing that would be available for my patients. Well, actually, in Washington State, I've got something called Mukilteo, which is a town north of Seattle. But you can get, the way I like using Malarone is at 60 pills for a month. And with a coupon, you can get it at Walmart in near Mukilteo, Washington for $134. Okay. Insurance will, without insurance coverage, if you did not have this coupon, you'd probably be talking about probably about $400, $600 a month. All right. So that may still be unaffordable for you, but I just wanted to show you, if you're trying to find out where you can get lower medicines when your insurance will not pay for it, go to that goodrx.com. Okay. So that might make it more affordable for you. All right. Now, for every germ, so there are herbal options that I suggest for both Bartonella and that I suggest for treating Lyme. And to look for those herbal options without me going through great detail on them, you might take a look at my article called Kills Babesia, a brief guide. And then you want to take a look at my article, which is called Lyme Disease Antibiotics. Okay. And in there, I lay out how to use two herbs for Lyme called Banderol Cemento, or herbal products called Banderol Cemento. They work about 85 to 90% of the time to effectively treat Lyme. And then for an herb for Babesia, I would either look at artemisinin if you don't live on the East Coast of the United States, where artemisinin seems not to work well these days, or you would look at something called Cryptolepis. And both of those are laid out in the articles, one called Kills Babesia Brief Guide, and the other one is my Lyme Disease Antibiotic Guide. Okay, all right. The other thing that you ought to look at doing if you have diarrhea is often, if you get diarrhea on antibiotics, often that can be corrected by taking sufficient amounts of probiotics. But make sure you're using a probiotic that uses strains that are proven to actually repopulate the intestines. All right. Most probiotics out there are garbage, to be quite honest with you. They're using strains of lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, bacteria that normally would inhabit our intestines, but they're often using low quality strains that actually do not repopulate. They don't work, basically. There are a limited number of products out there that have research that show that they are using strains that repopulate. And one of those is a product called HMF Forte. It's made by a company called Genestra, and they have good science showing their product actually does repopulate. If you're having diarrhea, on antibiotics, I would tend to use 4 of the HMF Fortes as one pill, one time a day, 4 pills, 1 time a day. Okay. All right. Then finally, am I accepting new patients in my practice? At this point, I'm not accepting new patients for me to be the prescriber. I am currently, unfortunately, my medical board has been giving me some problems here lately, and I'm not quite clear where that whole investigation is going to go. And they're giving me problems for managing Lyme disease, unfortunately. And so what I've decided to do until I get that straightened out, I'm not taking new people where I'm the prescriber. However, I am still taking new patients through an online service that I have where I provide you recommendations that you can implement on your own or with the help of a physician. And that's my one-to-one medical consult service. I am still working that way. And so let me show you how you would do a few things. I'm going to do a quick screen share so you can take a look here at some things. Treat Lyme book, soon to be renamed just Treat Lyme by Marty Ross MD. My online consult service, you can take a look here, and anyone can do that. Anyone that wants to get some direct advice from me. Again, the only problem with the consult is I can't literally prescribe or order tests, but I can make recommendations that your physician, and I write a note, you can show it to your doc, and many times they will implement what I recommend, okay? So I would read through this whole thing so you know for sure what you're getting into, including there's a disclaimer that I have a section here. It's a consent form that you would need to sign. But take a look at this whole thing, and if you are interested, reach out to, I tell you how to make contact with here. You'd be interacting with Christine, who runs my office in the supplement store for me. Okay. All right. And then in terms of a couple of things that you want to take a look at, I mentioned my article on Lyme disease antibiotics, and I mentioned my article on Babesia treatments. So take a look at my Babesia treatment article here. It's called Kills Babesia, a brief guide. Okay. And then in terms of my Lyme disease antibiotic guide, it's called a Lyme disease antibiotic guide. Take a look at that too. Okay. Those are some articles that will get you steered in the right direction here. All right. Let me go back here. Gives you some information that you can work with there. And yes, everyone like you, I'm hoping my board goes away. But I've been having an argument with them now for a couple of years, and they've made kind of a very negative move against me that we're defending, but I'm just not quite sure where it's all going to go. So anyhow, they came after me for helping a person with Lyme get well. And they just don't want to let it go, unfortunately. But I'm glad she got well. And so that's where we are right now. All right. Lisa, thank you for that question. Good luck to you. All right. Hello, Heidi. Let's see. Hi, doctor. Can you take mushroom extract and eat fermented foods if you have candida? Thanks. Yeah, I have no problem with that. Make sure that your mushroom extract is a hot water extract, though, in which they've removed the active ingredients and left garbage behind, in a sense, okay, with a hot water extraction process, and which is different than using ground up mushrooms. I would be more concerned if you're using ground up mushrooms, because there's garbage that can get included in those that might make it harder to get rid of candida. But if you're using a hot water extracted product, so for instance, I have a company that I carry at the supplement store called JHS Naturals. Their process is a hot water extraction where they pull out the chemicals that help mushrooms boost your immune system, okay? Yeah, and I have no problem with fermented foods either. Okay, thank you for that question, Heidi. Hello, Judy. Let's see, what are your thoughts on Epsom salt body baths and Epsom foot baths and or ion foot baths for detoxing? Thank you for doing those wonderful webinars. You're welcome. All right, so the thing about Epsom salt baths, the effect of detoxing in a bath is that you sweat. Okay, you get your whole body hot, and when you heat up either from a bath or you do far infrared saunas, or if you can, you go out and exercise. And I say if you can, you go out and exercise and you sweat. All right. So what happens when you heat up in any way? That causes toxins that are in you to move out of tissues into the bloodstream. And then what happens is you sweat, and 20% or so of those toxins get sweated out. The other 80% of those toxins go to the liver, where the liver uses glutathione to change them from a fat toxin into a water toxin, where they get moved out into the intestines and then you poop them out, okay? In an Epsom salt bath, the main thing that does the detoxing is the heat. What the Epsom salts do is they're rich in magnesium, and that magnesium gets absorbed into your skin and can help your muscles relax and deal with some of the achy pain, okay? All right, so I do like that as a form of detoxing. Epsom salt foot baths and ion foot baths, although I know the ion foot baths will give you dirty water, and so they use that as a way of saying you're detoxing, the water is dirty. I really don't think they do anything. And in terms of an Epsom salt foot bath, I don't think you get to heat up enough your whole body to do any effective detoxing either, okay? But in terms of an Epsom salt bath, I think that might be helpful. Or far infrared saunas, anything that heats you up is going to mobilize those toxins out of your body, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Judy, and thank you for that question. All right. Hello, Heidi. Let's see. Yeah, I just answered that. You asked it twice. Get rid of that. All right. Let's see here. Okay, let's see here. All right, Kathleen. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thank you so much for doing these webinars. You're welcome. I'm wondering what you suggest using in place of biocide to treat biofilms if someone has a nut allergy and cannot take biocidin because it has walnut hull in it. Okay. So in terms of there's a few things you can do for biofilms. Number one, and some of this is based on research too, okay? But some of it's not based on research. So the things that have been shown through research on Petri dish experiments to remove biofilms are the combination of banderol and cemento. Banderol is toba bark extract. Cemento is cat's claw. Based on some research that was done by Eva Choppy, that's SAPI, PhD, published in the Townsend Letter about 6 years ago. If you Google Eva Choppy Townsend Letter, you'll find this article. She ran modified Petri dish experiments where she was looking to see what antibiotics work against Lyme versus what herbs work against it and what happens with biofilms. Okay, these were all done. There were two studies she actually did. And so what we know from those two studies is that the combination of cat's claw and otoba bark extract, the products were cemento and banderol, that they do a good job of killing all three forms of the Lyme, and they removed almost 100% of biofilm during her experiments. Okay, now these are Petri dish. We can't say for sure what happens in a human based on Petri dish, but we get clues that maybe this will work in a human as well too. Okay, a living person, that is. All right. On a comparable study to the one she published on banderol cemento, she used the drug tinidazole, or a number of antibiotics, prescription antibiotics actually. And what was shown in that is that the antibiotic tinidazole that we use to treat cyst Lyme was also effective at removing 95% of biofilms, okay? So those are the two things that we have some scientific proof that they remove biofilms. And then the company that manufactures Biocide that you mentioned earlier has commissioned some studies too that I have seen. They haven't published them, but they shared them with me, where there's pretty impressive breakdown of biofilms with the Biocide as well too. So if I look at experimental support for things that break down biofilms, it's either going to be Biocide or it's going to be a combination of the Otoba and Cemento, or it's going to be tinidazole. Those would probably be the things that we have the most research-supported ways of, or research that supports these methods to remove biofilms, all right? Okay, then there are some things that in theory should work, all right? And they're the enzymes. And of the enzymes, I'd like lumbrokinase. Lumbrokinase is a group of enzymes that come from the skin of earthworms. It's a crazy illness sometimes, the things that we have to use. And so to understand what that does, let me explain what a biofilm is, all right? So biofilms are slime layers that cover germs, and Lyme can manufacture them. And they have multiple components. One is a sugar slime, and the second part is a skeleton, protein skeleton that holds that biofilm together, all right? In addition, there are multiple kinds of bacteria that live in these biofilms that all have certain functions. There's tubes that carry waste out and bring nutrients. And I mean, they're pretty elaborate structures actually, all right? But what the protein that makes up a biofilm skeleton is fibrin. And fibrin is the blood clotting protein actually, all right? So we know that that fibrin can be broken down by lumbrokinase. It's just that no one has done experiments on Lyme biofilms to show that they break them down, all right? And so I usually like using lumbrokinase as a 20 milligram pill, and you can do one pill twice a day. I suggest that when people take it, that they take it on an empty stomach by 1 hour either side, so that the lumbrokinase is absorbed to digest the biofilms and not used to break down food in the stomach, okay? All right. So those are some ways that I go about breaking down biofilms, okay? Now, one last thing I would say. Even though the prescription antibiotic that has the best chance of breaking down biofilms was shown on these experiments by Eva Choppy to be tinidazole, probably all antibiotics to some degree break down biofilm. So on those experiments where she looked at tinidazole, I think doxycycline was shown to break down 70%. Anyhow, all antibiotics to some degree will break down biofilm. And it used to be, until we had research showing that there are Lyme biofilms, that I would not even do anything to address biofilms and often get people well without even doing anything other than giving them prescription antibiotics, okay? So in my approach, I usually don't do any targeted biofilm treatments until about 6 to 9 months into treatment. And if they're not seeming to get better by these things that I do for them, then at that point, I might go after biofilms, okay? All right. If you want to hear more, read more about what all these things I just said, I have an article on biofilms in the Treat Lyme book. You could take a look at that, but basically it covers the things that I just mentioned here. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Kathleen. Oh, in terms of products for the lumbar kinase, the two main products that are out there are equivalent to each other. One is lumbar kinase by Allergy Research, and the other is lumbar kinase that's part of a product called Boluke, and that's Boluke. Either one are equally effective in terms of what I see in my practice. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Heidi. Let's see. I don't know if you got the question already. If you have the candida, can you eat? Yep, I did get that one. I know sometimes it takes me a while to work through all the questions that get written here, but yeah. All right. Hello, Sue. Hold on here just a minute. Let's see. Daughter 37 has Lyme, Bartonella, and Babesia. Successful treatment with amoxicillin for 2 years. She was off amoxicillin for a year, 1.5 years. Recently had severe herx and was put back on amoxicillin. Hold on here just a minute. Okay. Recently had severe herx and was put back on amoxicillin. During herx, she experienced severe chest pressure and pain, some shortness of breath and cough. Had EKG, echo stress test, chest x-ray, and CAT scan. All normal findings except the CT showed pectus excavatum, which she has never had any symptoms from. Awaiting Holter index from cardiothoracic surgeon, or Heller index from a cardiothoracic surgeon. In some research finding, costochondritis can occur in Lyme and co-infections. Appreciate. All right, I think, hold on, I got to make sure there wasn't another part to your question here. So I think what you're asking is what could be the cause of the chest pain, or could costochondritis be the cause of the chest pain? So chest pressure, and there was a similar question that was asked earlier, what can give you chest pain or chest pressure? And so any of the chest structures can do that, okay? And so it could be the heart, but it sounds like her heart is checked out okay. Pectus excavatum means that her chest bone kind of caves in a little bit instead of popping out like some of ours do. Sometimes it goes down, but in and of itself, that usually is not going to give chest pain either. By using antibiotics, you could have triggered a herx, which would lead to inflammation in the muscle and soft tissue structures, connective tissue structures. That could be giving some of the chest pain. And then finally, another thing that can give some of the chest pain is if you've got heartburn from antibiotics, that can give chest pain too. And earlier I talked about how to use licorice to help with that. Besides that, I agree with getting a cardiac evaluation to make sure it wasn't the heart structures themselves, and getting a chest x-ray and chest CAT scan to make sure it's not a lung issue. But I suspect this is either heartburn issue or it's just inflammation of the muscle and soft tissues from treating the Lyme, basically. All right? Okay. And then just another quick observation. I suspect she's been on more than amoxicillin if it's Bartonella and Babesia. But if not, you need to make sure that she gets on the right treatment for those, okay? And to get ideas on what to treat Bartonella and Babesia with, I would take a look at the articles that I've written about those too. All right? All right. Good luck to you, Sue, and good luck to your daughter. Thank you. Hello, Randy. Let's see. I've relapsed big time with the same symptoms as 6 years ago. I started diflucan nystatin to treat yeast, bad muscle weakness, killer headache, fatigue, taste buds not working, asthma, hoarse voice. Taking Banderol Cemento, what else should I do? Feel so sick. Thank you. All right. So first of all, and as I think, Randy, you're probably following some of the recommendations I make, and that is when somebody gets into what looks like a relapse, I always consider, could it be that they develop too many yeast in the intestines, okay? And as many of you know, the reason I focus on too many yeast is if you get too many yeast in the intestines, that triggers cytokines, and it can make it look like your whole Lyme came back again, when in fact it's because of too many yeast, okay? So I showed everyone earlier tonight, there's an article I have about how do you figure out if you have too many yeast. Take a look at that if you're in a relapse situation, all right? And if you do have too many yeast, treat them. And usually by around 3 to 4 weeks into treating the yeast, if it is yeast that is leading to most of the problems, you should start to feel better, okay? So I don't have any idea how long you've been treating here, but it may just be a matter of time, all right? Second observation I have about if it is a Lyme relapse, often when you get into relapse situations is not going back into the multi-years of treating all over again, okay? Typically with relapses, you can be back on your way feeling good in about 4 to 6 months, as long as the antibiotics you're taking are working, all right? Now, Banderol Cemento are good herbal antibiotics. They'll work about 85 to 90% of the time. And part of the reason you could even be feeling worse is from killing yeast and killing Lyme, okay? Because unfortunately, as we kill those, guess what they trigger? Herxheimer reaction, which is more cytokines get made, all right? So at this point, because I can't ask you questions, I don't know how long you've been treated here, it just may be a matter of time to get the yeast out, usually by 3 to 4 weeks, and getting a Herxheimer reaction to go down before you start feeling better. One thing I would make sure you're doing is getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Number 2, lowering cytokines with Mariva 500 curcumin, okay? Those are some things I definitely would be doing in addition to treating yeast and in addition to using the Banderol Cemento to treat the Lyme, okay? Those are some thoughts. Good luck to you, Randy, and thank you for that question. Oh, let me do a quick screen share here, everyone. There is an article that I do have about what to do if you've gotten worse, okay? And that is, let's see. Oh, here it is. Steps to fix a Lyme treatment crash. All right, and take a look at this. This is basically the article I have on think yeast first before you start treating Lyme, basically, okay? The whole video recording on that, and I talk about some other things in here too, but take a look at that, all right? And then in terms of things to do to treat yeast, I showed you my yeast chapter earlier. I would take a look at that as well. Okay, all right, let me go back here. Hello, Tracy. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I have a question about the new I Gen X IGX spot test. I was part of the Lyme RIX vaccine study. My question is this. The I Gen X spot came back negative. Did I have Lyme and clear it? Or maybe I never really had Lyme. Now have chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, neurosymptoms. Any thoughts? Okay. So the I Gen X spot or IGX spot is a test method called an ELISpot, okay? And what we do in an ELISpot is we basically remove a type of white blood cell from your blood called T cells, and then we expose them to proteins of Lyme, and we see if they make inflammatory cytokines, all right? There's the word cytokines, all right? And so those T cells, if they are killing Lyme or actively going after Lyme in your body, should make cytokines, and that's what constitutes a positive test. If they release cytokines, that's a positive test. That means that they are seeing Lyme in you, all right? And the ELISpot in general, based on research about ELISpots should be able to find an infection when present about 85% of the time. So they're not a perfect test, okay? Now, the problem is the IGX spot by I Gen X doesn't seem to work even as well as 85% of the time. So any lab, when they come up with their own method of testing something, especially if they develop an in-house lab, is supposed to do something called validation studies. And what you do with validation studies is you take known cases of the thing you're testing for, and you see how effective is your new test at finding those cases, all right? So when I Gen X did their validation studies on their IGX spot test, it was only effective at finding Lyme about 30% of the time, all right? So their method of doing an ELISpot, at least based on their validation studies, is not entirely effective, all right? When it did find it, though, it's accurate about 95% of the time, I believe, okay? All right, now, so because of that, I am just not using the IGX spot. I think they have to go back and relook at the technique that they're using or something. And what my preference is at this point is if I'm going to do an ELISpot, I'm going to tend to use Armin Labs out of Germany that's been doing this for a bit more time. Now, I will tell you about Armin Labs, though, too. Armin uses a test kit from another manufacturer that they then use in their own lab. And I cannot find any validation studies on this manufacturer, but in general, ELISpots are supposed to find something 85% of the time based on general research, okay? And also the Armin Labs ELISpot has been out there for a longer period of time. There used to be another lab here in the States that was doing an ELISpot. It was called the iSpot test by Pharmacin Labs. But unfortunately, they ran into some trouble with the federal government and lost some of their accreditation, and they're no longer offering that test. But that test, when they did it based on their own validation studies, was shown to find Lyme about 95% of the time. I think they probably overestimated based on their validation studies, but their test seemed to be a better technique than this new I Gen X spot test is, okay? So could you still have Lyme? Yes. That I Gen X spot is probably not the best way to determine it. I would probably go back and relook at an ELISpot test. And even if it is negative, if you have a lot of symptoms still suggesting Lyme, I would probably treat because, again, ELISpots are not perfect at determining if you have Lyme. In fact, there is not any test that proves you do or do not have Lyme. Sometimes we just have to use our own clinical judgment as to whether it's there or not. Okay? All right. I hope that gives you some answers. All right. Good luck. All right. Hello, Cindy. Let's see. Do Epsom salt baths with peroxide really help to detox Lyme? All right. So, again, earlier, I think you were the one that asked me about baths and detox. So, the act of heating up in a bath is what does the detoxing. I mentioned that earlier tonight. Those of you that are just hearing this portion, review the recording tomorrow where I talk about detoxing through heating up. Okay. All right. So, the Epsom salts then have magnesium in them that can relax your muscles as they get absorbed to the skin. Peroxide actually is an oxidizing agent that may get absorbed in your skin, and as an oxidizing agent may kill Lyme germs. Now, hear all those mays, okay? So in theory, peroxide can kill. I don't think I would use it as the only treatment I use to get rid of Lyme. And it's not clear if you do it through a bath, you get enough absorbed that it actually kills anything at all, okay? So anyhow, I hope that answers your question there. All right. Thanks, Cindy. All right. Hello, Eric. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Marty. First of all, it's great to meet you. You're good to meet you, too. Let's see. I have a few questions, which I think many people will find helpful. First question is, what do you think about Stephen Buhner's herbs? Are they effective? My other question is, I recently had an MRI, and now my ears hurt and are sensitive. What is this? So Stephen Buhner's herbs, I think work about 70-75% of the time. I think, and I use some of his approaches. So for instance, his approach of using Sitta acuta and Hutania to treat Bartonella, I do use successfully in practice about 70-75% of the time. I think for some people probably that have not as severe Lyme, I think all herbal approaches can work great. I think when you get into some more severe situations, however, sometimes you do need to use the prescription antibiotics. But as somebody that's done a great job of researching and looking at ways to handle things herbally, I think he's a good resource. So number one, I would agree that he's a good resource. Secondly, let's see. I don't know why that MRI is causing your ears to hurt. That's why I said interesting. I'm not clear what the best answer would be for that. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Eric. Thank you for that question. Hello, Kobe. Hi, Marty. Is there a particular pharmaceutical antiviral that you would use for Epstein-Barr virus, or would you use olive leaf extract? So I wouldn't use any of the pharmaceuticals. Those pharmaceutical antivirals, we have them for flu, we have them for HIV, and we have them for genital and cold sore herpes. That's what they were developed for, okay? None of them were developed to treat Epstein-Barr. And so I know some of my colleagues do that, but I want to know where the science is that shows that it works against that, okay? So I tend to go with olive leaf extract, which is an herbal antiviral. I usually will start people at 500 milligrams 3 times a day. If they don't herx on that, then I go up to 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day. And if they're not herxing on that, then I go up to 1,500 milligrams 3 times a day. I also, in doing that, like to stimulate the immune system to help get rid of the viruses. And for that, I like using something called reishi mushrooms, 400 milligrams 3 times a day. Or I might use transfer factor plasmic made by Research Nutritionals that uses transfer factors or proteins that stimulate white blood cells to attack those viruses. Okay, that's what my approach is. The plasmic I would use as 1 pill twice a day. Okay, all right. Thanks, Kobe, for that question. Good luck to you. Hello, Laura. Let's see. What do you think of stevia for Lyme? I was really thrilled by the stevia studies that were originally done. And the work on stevia has been done by Eva Choppy. I mentioned her earlier tonight. She's had some studies done that show that they break down biofilms. All right. Notice I didn't recommend them as a biofilm treatment, but her studies suggest they break down biofilm. She's also had some subsequent studies that show that in addition to treating biofilms, they're useful at treating what are known as persister cells in Lyme. And effectively what a persister cell is a form of a spirochete and form of cyst that go into hibernation and start ignoring antibiotics. And she's on her Petri dish experiments, stevia seems to do a good job. Okay, but here's the problem. I just never have seen anybody really get well on stevia. And I think what the issue is that it's not well enough absorbed in the body to be effective. So that's what the problem is. When we rely on just on Petri dish experiments, they may not always reflect the human experience, okay? So I generally am not using stevia these days. I just don't find it to be that effective. Okay, thanks for that question, Laura. Hello, Eric. Let's see, Dr. Ross. I have another question, which I forgot to ask. I asked my doctor about taking cat's claw and grapefruit and grape seed, and she said that was a horrible idea and could lead to serious issues, including seizure, internal bleeding, and even death. Is this true? No, I disagree. I don't know why she's saying that. She also said, I don't know what else she said. She also said that Lyme disease something. Anyhow, I don't see where the second part of your question is there, but I hope that answers that first part. And good luck to you. Hello, Carl. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Any thoughts on adding raw kefir to the diet? I have been doing this since January and wondering if the additional yeast can be creating more problems. Thank you. I don't have strong feelings either way about kefir. I think you could go either way. One way to see if it is actually causing a problem is remove it and see if your yeast, if you're having problems, gets under better control. It sometimes I think can be promoting. Sometimes it is useful in getting rid of yeast. I think you can go either way on that one. Okay. All right. Thanks for that question, Carl. Hello, Lulu. Let's see. I worked up on my Septin and Doxy over 6 months, was feeling more myself, and then Doc said, let's go off Septin. and try another. I went downhill again, which for me is feeling out of it and headaches. Does this say to you I need more time on the 2, or what would be your ideas? Thanks so much. Okay. So to help answer that, I'm going to just raise a couple points that you'll need to figure out for yourself. Okay. Number one, if you're using antibiotics, herbal or prescription, that are working well for the Lyme germ, and Ceftin and Doxy primarily would be for the Lyme germ. If you're using them and then you stop and the germ is still active in you, it usually is going to take about 6 weeks, maybe even 2 months before you start having a decline because you got on something that's not working for your germ, okay? So if they change you to antibiotics that aren't working as well as Ceftin and Doxy, it would take about 6 to 8 weeks before you grew enough new Lyme that you would feel bad, okay? And the reason for that is Lyme has a very long replication cycle, and some estimates that it replicates every 4 weeks. So it takes enough time to get enough germ load to grow, or germs to come back when you change to something that's not working before you start getting symptomatic from it, okay? Now, if when you change to a new antibiotic, you got worse within a week or so, that can suggest a Herxheimer reaction, which means you still have a lot of active Lyme going on in you and that you need to keep treating, okay? So those would be the things that I would have you consider, all right? When did you get worse? Was it right away, or was it 6 to 8 weeks down the road? If it was 6 to 8 weeks down the road, to suggest the new regimen is not working, and your doctor needs to come up with one that will work. If it was right away, I would probably suggest more of a Herxheimer reaction, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Lulu. Oh, I think we answered that one earlier. Hello, let's see. Hi, B. Thank you, Dr. Marty. I read that Bartonella can cause crumbling of the teeth. Mine have become fragile. Is there something that one can take to remineralize teeth? So I'm not familiar with the idea that Bartonella causes crumbling of the teeth. I haven't seen any science that supports that. I know you may be reading things online, but I'm not clear that that's true, nor would I say that's something I have seen in my practice, and I've been doing this since 2004, okay? But maybe it has. I don't have ideas on how to remineralize your teeth, unfortunately. It might be something you want to talk to your dentist about, but I'm just not clear how to do that. All right. Sorry about that. Good luck to you, V. Hello, Mandy. Hi, Dr. Ross. What causes a sudden onset of skin to imprint easily with very light pressure? It's not raised, itchy as it would be with dermatographia or dermatographia. I'm stumbling on that one. What that word means is that when you scratch yourself, you get hives that develop in a line where you scratch yourself, okay? It simply imprints. My skin now feels super soft and wrinkles easily. Never did before. I'm 33. Thank you. Okay. So often what imprinting means, if you press on yourself and then you pull your finger off and you see that fingerprint still there, that's imprinting. I think that's what you mean. That usually is due to the accumulation of fluid in your tissues. So you're retaining water is probably what that means. And you can retain water from having too much salt in your diet, for instance. You can retain water if your heart's having a hard time working. And some medicines will cause water retention, specifically the tetracyclines. Doxy, Minnow, and tetracycline can cause water retention, okay? So that's probably what it means, is some water retention. You might want to talk to your doctor about that, see if they can help you find a cause for that, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Mandy. Thank you for that question. Hello, Tim. Hi, Dr. Marty. After symptoms for 40 days, I was put on oral antibiotics of minocycline, Zithromax, and Mepron for Lyme and Babesia. Most of my neuro symptoms have not shown any signs of remission, including my tinnitus. Should I expect to take longer for these to get better, or would I need IV therapy? Let's see. All right, so this regimen that you're on of minocycline, zithromax, and Mepron is useful for babesia. Okay, that's going to work about 85% of the time. The minocycline zithromax combination is also something that would treat Bartonella. And the reason I'm even raising that is sometimes neuropathy and tinnitus like you're having is part of Lyme, but also can be part of Bartonella. So you've got Bartonella covered with this regimen as well too. In terms of a Lyme regimen, the only thing I see missing here is your minocycline zithromax combo is good for treating intracellular and spirochete Lyme. Some people think that Mepron can kill cyst Lyme. I am kind of skeptical about that. So I would probably add in some grapefruit seed extract, the herb grapefruit seed extract. I didn't say grape seed extract. I said grapefruit seed extract. Okay, 250 milligrams, 1 pill 2 times a day. That's an effective Lyme cyst treatment. Okay, and then you've got a comprehensive treatment. All right, now when you've had Lyme in you, when you say symptoms for 40 days, the problem is I don't know how long the germ has been in you to lead up to those symptoms. All right. So if you told me you got a tick bite 40 days ago, you got symptoms right away, and you're not getting better, I might say probably treat for about another month. You should start seeing some changes. Okay. But it could be that you've had this brewing in you for a long time, in which case there are some studies that tell us how quickly people will turn the corner. Okay. So first of all, when it comes to the Lyme, if you've had it in you for a year or more, even though it may have taken a long time to manifest symptoms, there's one unpublished study that tells us that for the Lyme portion of things, by 3 months of treatment, 30% of people start feeling better. By 6 months of treatment, 60% of people start feeling better. And by 9 months, 90% of people start feeling better. Okay, so for the Lyme germ portion of things, it may take more time. In terms of Babesia and Bartonella, their symptoms start to improve usually within 4 weeks to 8 weeks of being on the correct treatment for them. Okay, so if you've only been on treatment for 3 weeks, it just may be too early to be seeing any improvements at this point. All right, that would be the big message that I would give to you. All right. All right. Good luck to you, Tim, and thank you for that question. Hello, Aaron. Let's see. Do any Lyme patients deal with foot pain, maybe nerve, and anything that can improve? Numbness occasionally too. Thank you. So, yes, Lyme can give you foot pain. And Bartonella can too. Bartonella often will give pain that gives you an achy feeling at the balls of the feet and maybe into the arch of the feet. If you have that kind of a pain, look to see if you have other symptoms suggesting Bartonella too. Decide if you need to treat Bartonella. All right. So other symptoms that can suggest Bartonella include having ongoing anxiety, having increased day sweats, having restless legs, which is a feeling things crawling on your legs, so you have to move them around a lot. Sometimes having bladder irritation, nerve injury showing up as burning, piercing, electrical, sharp stabbing pains. That can be nerve injury. Having a lot of neurologic hypersensitivities like light, sound, touch sensitivities. That sometimes could suggest Bartonella. Okay. In terms of, so if your pain is of a neurologic, well, first of all, whatever is causing that pain, make sure you're treating the right germ. So if it's Bartonella, make sure you're covering for that. If it's Lyme, make sure you're treating Lyme. All right. And then in terms of dealing with the foot pain, if it is a nerve pain, it will have, again, qualities of sharp stabbing, shooting, burning, piercing, or electrical, versus achy pain is probably more of a Lyme type pain or Bartonella pain. Neurologic has more of the burning, sharp stabbing, shooting, piercing, burning, or electrical. Okay. If it is nerve pain, the herb you might want to try for the nerve pain is L-theanine. L-theanine is a component of green tea, and it's converted in the brain into a chemical called GABA. And GABA, if we give more GABA to GABA nerve receptors, it calms agitation and pain. All right. You would start at 100 milligrams 3 times a day. You can work up to 400 milligrams 3 times a day. And your limiting factor would be as if it makes you drowsy. All right. That can sometimes help with nerve pain. Prescription medicines that can help with nerve pain are usually gabapentin, Lyrica, imipramine, desipramine, nortriptyline. Those are antidepressant medicines that can help with nerve pain. You would need to talk to your doctor to get prescriptions for those. In terms of achy kind of pain, I would try to get cytokines knocked down to help with that. And for that kind of pain, I would work with curcumin, as I mentioned a number of times tonight, 500 milligrams 3 times a day on that. Okay. I hope that gives you some help with that. All right. Good luck to you, Aaron. All right. Hello, Pat. Do you ever see cracking, popping joints in your practice? Do you attribute that to Lyme, Bart, or Babs? What is your suggested treatment? Popping joints, especially in the neck, is something I see that's part of Lyme. And often by treating the Lyme, they're going to get better without having to do anything other than treating with your antibiotics and all the other things I recommend to treat Lyme. Okay? All right. So I hope that gives you some help there. Hi, Lindsay. Let's see. Dr. Ross, curious if you worry about ticks with your 2 dogs. Good question. Let me bring one of them out here for just a minute. Hey, Thor, come here. Come on, Thor. Thor. Oh, I got to show. Come here. Come here. Okay, this guy, this is Thor. And I have another, he's a Basenji, okay? And I have another one you may have seen in here called Halo, who's his sister, okay? But this guy has had Lyme before, actually. And where he got it from was I take my dogs to a kennel about an hour outside of Seattle here. And when he came back one time, even though we never found a tick attached, he had swollen joints that started to develop. And he became very neurologic and almost rabid-like in terms of his behavior. And what it took with him was doxycycline for about 6 months. I had to convince the vet that it was Lyme, even though their testing was negative. And with that, he got better and came back to normal pretty quickly. So yes, they sometimes can get it up when they go to the breeders. And I'm always doing good tick checks on them when they come back. And especially with this little guy, I watch him very carefully whenever, not breeders, but the kennel I take them to. So yeah, there you go. Yes, they can. And I just scope on them. I do my own tick checks on them regularly. I walk them here in Seattle. I live in the very urban part of Seattle down around the Space Needle. And I do some random tick checks, but I don't think we have much in the way of ticks here right in the heart of the city. But it's possible. And so I do look at them periodically to make sure. Yeah. Anyhow, thank you for that question. Hello, friend. Hi, Dr. Ross. Please tell us the best test to monitor inflammation from Borrelia and Bart. Thanks much. You know, I actually don't believe in doing the testing for those. I mean, you can tell based on symptoms with pain, that suggests inflammation, okay? And so I tend not to do testing. Because it can be costly. I don't find it to always be accurate. Inflammation is something you measure or judge based on clinical symptoms, basically. All right? And thanks for that question, Fran. Hello, Tom. Let's see. Dr. Ross, do you have any experience or would you recommend Dr. Zhang's protocol for Lyme? Thanks. So Dr. Zhang is a Chinese medicine doctor out of New York City. At least I think he's still from New York City. And he's got an herbal protocol for treating Lyme. I see some people that do get better from that. I tend to see better results for people, I think, when they do Buhner herbs or if they follow an herbal protocol similar to what I recommend in my various articles in the Kills Babesia and the Kills Lyme article that I have and in the Kills Bartonella article. So I would say that probably looking at my approach and the Ross Lyme support protocol is probably going to be stronger for you, followed by Buhner herbs recommendations, followed by a Zhang type protocol. Okay, so let me just do a quick screen share here, everyone. Treatment protocol. Find it here on my treatment tab. And I am now calling it the Ross Lyme Support Protocol. And basically, it's a pretty comprehensive guide. It tells you the things you need to address and gives you either herbal or prescription recommendations, okay? So you got to get sleep. I give you some ideas on how to do that here. Number 2, I suggest being on a paleo-type diet. Number 3, you got to knock cytokines down. I give you recommendations on how to do that here. Number 4, be on something that supports the body to deal with stress, and that's the herb ashwagandha. Number 5, deal with hormonal problems if you have them. Number 6, be on a good multivitamin. Number 7, get yeast out if they're there and control them from popping back up. Number 8, treat your Lyme infection. If you want to go herbal, I usually suggest Otoba and cat's claw. Number 9, do detoxification. Number 10, treat your co-infections of Bartonella and Babesia. And you'd have to look at my kills Bartonella and my kills Babesia. Get exercise, and then I give you a bunch of steps to take at 6 to 9 months if you're not getting any better from those 12 steps above. Okay, I call that the Ross Lyme support protocol. I think that's going to do better for you than what either Cowden protocol, for instance, or it's going to do better than Buhner herbs, and it's going to do better than the Zhang protocol does. Okay, all right. Let me go back here. All right. Thanks for that question, Tom. Hello, Dilek. Let's see. What do you think about the use of infrared mats? So infrared heat, I think, can help with detoxing. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Epsom salt baths, the act of heating, any kind of heat source, is going to help pull toxins out. You're going to sweat 20% out. The other toxins that are going to get mobilized by that heat are going to go to the liver, where the liver is going to use glutathione to change them into a water-based toxin. They get moved out in the intestines. We poop them out. So any way of heating up, whether it's an infrared mat or whether it's Epsom salt baths, it's an infrared sauna, any of those can be helpful at helping with the detox portion of things. Okay? All right. Thanks for that question. Hello, McKay. See, hi, Dr. Ross. I've been watching your webinars for quite a while, and I'm so thankful for them. Thank you. I'm glad you're watching them. I hope you're getting some help from them. I have also had a consultation with you, which I would recommend to any suffering. Oh, thanks for that recommendation. I was wondering if you had any place for Lyme sufferers to talk with others fighting this. I would be very interested to talk. To people who are dealing with Lyme. Doctor missed it for 18 years, and like most suffering, know the issues with medical boards in regards to Lyme. Most of us don't feel well enough to do much about it, but think knowing people with the struggle would help. Any ideas? So, McKay, I don't know of any specific Lyme support groups or places you would go to discuss. You might want to look and just Google Lyme support groups in wherever the state is where you are. Usually there's the Lyme Disease Association of America has local chapters. There are other national Lyme disease organizations as well too. I know there's what was previously called the California Lyme Disease Association, now is called LymeDisease.org, that has some support groups across the country. There's another one I'm blanking on right now, but I would just Google Lyme support groups and see what you pull up. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. That's the best I can do for you on that. And good luck to you with with your treatment then too. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Hello, Katie. Let's see. I had a relapse of Lyme Bartonella in 2016. Now my weakness is slowly improving. Sensitivities are improving, but new OCD and anxiety symptoms have started. How do I know if Lyme is active again? So one thing you could do, that at least if it comes back positive, it does give you proof, some evidence, and that is to get an ELISpot test. So an ELISpot looks to see if your T white blood cells are being active against Lyme and even Bartonella here. You can get, and I would use Armin Labs out of Germany to do that. Okay. All right. Now, it's still possible you could have active Lyme and Bartonella and have a negative ELISpot test. And but if you get a positive ELISpot test back for either one of those, that gives you some proof it's active. Now, the problem with Armin's Bartonella ELISpot is he's only testing against Bartonella henselae. He may be doing Bartonella cantana too, but there are 30, we estimate nearly 30 strains of Bartonella. So even Armin's Bartonella test misses 28 strains. So sometimes you just got to look and say, clinically, does this look like Bart? And clinically, does this look like Lyme? And you treat based upon the clinical presentation. But if you want some laboratory evidence to support that, if it comes back positive, that gives you some proof. That would be the ELISpot test, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Katie, and thank you for that question. All right. So, everyone, that's it for me for tonight. We're going to take a week off next week, okay? And so I'm going to be back for another series of 3 webinars beginning the second week in March. I'll be taking next week off. So I'm glad you were here tonight, and I hope that those of you that were here or those of you listening in on the recordings tomorrow got some useful information. So tomorrow morning, you will wind up getting an email from me, and that email will give you information about how to find a copy of the, or to view a copy of the recording for today's webinar. Also, oops, hold on here a minute, everyone. I'm trying to take care of one thing I forgot to take care of earlier. Just a minute. All right, let me go back here. All right, sorry about that. I'm multitasking. There was something I wanted to take you to. So tomorrow morning, look for the email from me. It'll come out between 6:30 a.m. in the morning, which will have an edited version of the recording of the webinar tonight. Okay. Again, you can also find that on my Facebook page at Facebook/Treat Lyme. And you can find that also on my supplement store, treatlyme.com, at the bottom of the landing page for that too. Okay. Here in a second, as I sign off, I'm going to redirect you over to the Treat Lyme book to the subscribe page. And I'd appreciate if you subscribe, because when you subscribe to the writings, you're supporting these webinars as well too. Also, you get a lot of good information. The information I put into those articles is current and useful in helping move your treatment forward too. And instead of waiting for my response week to week, you can even read those articles and give you some useful information. So I hope you subscribe to the Treat Lyme book and support the work that I'm doing here too. Good to see everyone tonight, and good night. So I'm going to take you over to the Treat Lyme book now. Good night, everyone.